The SWAT team was certain they had cornered a dangerous suspect in the police station parking lot and moved in with weapons drawn. But when they ordered the black man to get on the ground, they had no idea they were about to hold their new commanding officer at gunpoint.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment before we start to learn more about what happened.
Commander Marcus Jackson pulled his black SUV into the parking lot of the Metropolitan Police Department's Special Operations Division at exactly 0700 hours, 15 minutes before his scheduled first briefing as the unit's new commanding officer. At 42, Marcus carried himself with the precise bearing that came from 18 years of military service, including 12 years leading special operations teams in some of the world's most dangerous combat zones. Marcus had been handpicked for this position after a distinguished career that began with the Army Rangers and culminated in commanding Delta Force operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. His transition to civilian law enforcement had been seamless, with 3 years of exemplary service, leading tactical units in Chicago before being recruited to take over the troubled SWAT program in Metropolitan City. The unit Marcus was inheriting had a reputation for excellence in tactical operations, but also carried baggage from several controversial incidents involving excessive force and questionable decision-making. The police chief had specifically chosen Marcus to reform the unit's culture while maintaining its operational effectiveness. His military experience, combined with his recent law enforcement success, made him the ideal candidate to bridge the gap between warrior mentality and community policing. This morning's agenda included meeting his new team, reviewing current protocols, and establishing his command philosophy. Marcus had spent the weekend studying personnel files and operational reports, preparing to lead a unit of 12 highly trained officers who had been operating without permanent leadership for 6 months. Marcus was dressed in civilian clothes for his first day, planning to change into his tactical uniform after the initial briefings. He carried a large equipment bag containing his personal gear, official transfer documents, and the new unit protocols he had developed. His appearance was deliberately low-key, as he preferred to observe his new command without the immediate deference that came with visible rank insignia. Inside the Special Operations Building, Officer Jake Thompson was monitoring the security cameras as part of his early morning duties. Thompson, 26 years old and a 4-year veteran of the SWAT team, prided himself on his tactical awareness and threat assessment capabilities. He had been on edge lately due to intelligence reports about potential threats against law enforcement facilities. When Thompson spotted Marcus on the security monitor, several factors immediately triggered his alert status. He saw a black man in civilian clothes carrying what appeared to be tactical equipment near police vehicles in the early morning hours. Thompson's training had taught him to treat any unidentified person near sensitive facilities as a potential threat until proven otherwise. "Control, this is Thompson," he radioed to the dispatch center. "I have a possible suspicious individual in the parking lot, black male, civilian clothes, carrying unknown equipment near department vehicles." Thompson continued monitoring as Marcus walked purposefully toward the building entrance. The officer noted Marcus's confident demeanor and systematic scan of the area, behaviors that Thompson interpreted as possible surveillance or reconnaissance activity. "All units, this is Thompson," he broadcast on the tactical frequency. "We may have a potential threat in the facility parking lot. Unknown individual displaying possible surveillance behavior. Recommend immediate response." Within 60 seconds, 3 SWAT officers emerged from the building in full tactical gear. Officers Davis, Martinez, and Johnson were Thompson's teammates, all experienced tactical operators who took threats against their facility seriously. They had been conducting early morning equipment checks when Thompson's alert came through. The three officers positioned themselves strategically around the parking lot, using vehicles as cover while maintaining clear fields of fire toward Marcus. Their approach was textbook tactical positioning, designed to contain and control a potentially dangerous situation. Officer Davis, the senior member of the response team, activated his radio. Subject is approximately 40 years old, black male, civilian clothing, carrying what appears to be equipment bag, maintaining visual contact. Marcus was pulling his gear bag from his SUV when he noticed armed figures moving into position around the parking lot. His military experience immediately recognized the tactical formation, but he couldn't understand why a SWAT team would be deploying against him in a police station parking lot. "This is SWAT! Put your hands where we can see them!" Davis shouted from behind a patrol car, his rifle trained on Marcus. Marcus slowly raised his hands, keeping them clearly visible while maintaining his calm demeanor. His military training had prepared him for unexpected situations, but being held at gunpoint by his own officers was not a scenario he had anticipated. "Officers, I'm Commander Jackson," Marcus called out clearly. "I'm your new unit commander. I have identification and transfer orders in my jacket pocket." "Keep your hands up," Martinez shouted. "Don't reach for anything." Davis spoke into his radio. "Subject claims to be Commander Jackson. Can anyone confirm the new commander's identity and ETA?" Thompson, still monitoring from inside, checked his duty roster. "Davis, the new commander is scheduled for 0715 hours, but I don't have any identification photos or physical description." Marcus realized the situation was escalating beyond a simple misunderstanding. "Officers, I can provide my credentials. My transfer orders are signed by Chief Williams, and I have my military identification and civilian law enforcement certifications." "Slowly remove your identification with 2 fingers only," Davis instructed, maintaining his weapon's aim. Marcus carefully reached into his jacket and produced his official transfer orders, his police identification, and his military credentials. He placed them on the ground as instructed and stepped back with his hands raised. Officer Johnson approached cautiously, keeping his weapon ready while examining the documents. "Davis, these look official. Transfer orders signed by the chief, dated yesterday. Police identification shows Commander Marcus Jackson, Special Operations Division." Davis lowered his weapon slightly but maintained his tactical position. "Thompson, can you contact the chief's office to verify? We need confirmation before we stand down." At that moment, Chief Williams arrived at the facility for his own early morning meeting with the new commander. Williams immediately recognized the tactical deployment in his parking lot and understood that a serious situation was developing. "What's the situation here?" Chief Williams called out as he approached the scene. "Chief, we have a subject claiming to be the new SWAT commander," Davis reported. "We found him in the parking lot with tactical equipment, and we're verifying his identity." Chief Williams looked at Marcus, who was still standing with his hands raised, and his expression shifted to one of shock and concern. "Officers, stand down immediately. That is Commander Jackson." The SWAT team slowly lowered their weapons, the reality of their mistake beginning to sink in. They had just held their new commanding officer at gunpoint based on assumptions and incomplete information. Marcus lowered his hands and straightened his posture, his military bearing immediately apparent even in civilian clothes. "Chief Williams, good morning. I believe we need to discuss some training protocols with the team." Chief Williams approached Marcus with obvious embarrassment. "Commander Jackson, I apologize for this incident. There was clearly a breakdown in communication and recognition protocols." Davis stepped forward, removing his helmet. "Commander, I'm Officer Davis. Sir, we had reports of a suspicious individual, and we followed our threat response procedures." Marcus looked at each of the officers who had held him at gunpoint. "Officer Davis, what specifically made me suspicious?" What elements of my behavior or appearance triggered your threat assessment? Davis hesitated, realizing that his honest answer would expose the racial profiling that had driven their response. Sir, you were in civilian clothes with tactical equipment in a secure area during early morning hours. Officer Davis, this is a police station parking lot, not a combat zone, Marcus replied calmly. I was carrying gear to my new assignment and had every right to be here. What you haven't explained is why you assumed I was a threat rather than a law enforcement officer. Martinez stepped forward. Commander, we've had intelligence about potential threats to law enforcement facilities. We were being cautious. Cautious? Marcus asked. Or profiling? Officer Martinez, how many white men in civilian clothes have you held at gunpoint in this parking lot? The question hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. The officers had no answer because they had never treated a white person as an automatic threat under similar circumstances. Chief Williams intervened. Commander Jackson, these officers will receive additional training on recognition protocols and bias awareness. This incident is completely unacceptable. Marcus nodded. Chief Williams, I appreciate that. But I want these officers to understand something more fundamental. You've just demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking that has created community relations problems for law enforcement. He turned to address the SWAT team directly. Officers, you saw a black man with equipment and immediately assumed threat. You didn't consider that he might be a fellow officer, a contractor, or in this case, your new commanding officer. Your assumptions put everyone in danger, including yourselves. Davis looked down at his boots. Commander, we were following our training. No, you weren't, Marcus replied firmly. Your training should have included verification procedures before deploying weapons. Your training should have emphasized de-escalation and identification. What you followed were your own biases. Thompson, who had initiated the alert, approached the group. Commander Jackson, I was the one who called in the suspicious person report. I was monitoring the cameras and made the assessment based on what I observed. Marcus looked at Thompson directly. Officer Thompson, what specifically did you observe that warranted a SWAT response? Thompson struggled to articulate a legitimate justification. Sir, you seemed to be conducting surveillance of our vehicles and facility. I was walking to the building entrance while carrying my gear, Marcus corrected. The same thing any officer might do when reporting for duty. Officer Thompson, would you have made the same assessment if I had been white? Thompson couldn't answer honestly without admitting his bias, so he remained silent. Marcus continued, Officers, this incident represents a fundamental problem in modern law enforcement. When we allow unconscious bias to drive our tactical decisions, we compromise both officer safety and community trust. Chief Williams stepped forward. Commander Jackson, how do you want to proceed with discipline for this incident? Marcus considered the question carefully. Chief Williams, I want these officers to understand that their actions could have resulted in a tragedy. If I had been armed and reacted defensively to being threatened, someone could have died today over a misunderstanding rooted in racial profiling. He turned back to the team. Officers, you're going to receive comprehensive training on bias recognition, de-escalation techniques, and proper identification procedures. You're also going to participate in community engagement programs so you can understand the impact of your actions on the people we serve. Davis spoke up. Commander, what about our careers? Are we going to be terminated? Marcus looked at each officer individually. That depends on what you do with this learning opportunity. This incident can either be the moment you become better officers and better people, or it can be the moment your careers in law enforcement end. The choice is yours. He picked up his credentials from the ground and straightened his jacket. Officers, I've led tactical teams in combat zones where split-second decisions meant life or death. But even in combat, we followed rules of engagement and proper identification procedures. There's no excuse for what happened here today. Chief Williams addressed the team. All of you report to my office at 1400 hours for individual interviews about this incident. Commander Jackson, I'll let you proceed with your team briefing once you're ready. As the SWAT officers dispersed to process what had occurred, Marcus gathered his gear and headed toward the building entrance. Officer Davis approached him hesitantly. Commander Jackson, sir, I want you to know that I'm committed to learning from this mistake. I realize now that I let my assumptions override my professional judgment. Marcus paused and looked at Davis. Officer Davis, recognition of bias is the first step toward eliminating it. The question is whether you're willing to do the hard work of changing your mindset and your approach to the job. Yes, sir, I am. Marcus nodded. Then we'll start that work today. But understand this, trust is earned through consistent action, not through apologies. You'll have to prove that you've learned from this experience. 3 months later, the Metropolitan Police SWAT team had become a model for community-oriented tactical policing. Under Marcus's leadership, they implemented comprehensive bias training, community engagement programs, and reformed recognition protocols. The parking lot incident became a case study used in police academies nationwide, demonstrating how unconscious bias can compromise officer safety and community relations. Officer Davis became one of the unit's most effective community liaison officers, using his experience to help other officers recognize and overcome their own biases. The team's relationship with the community improved dramatically, and their tactical effectiveness actually increased as they learned to distinguish between real threats and perceived threats based on stereotypes. Commander Marcus Jackson continued to lead by example, showing that true tactical leadership meant protecting both officers and the community they served, regardless of the color of anyone's skin. Because in law enforcement, the most dangerous weapon isn't a rifle or a pistol, it's an assumption.